It's inconceivable what the government knew before you ever went there.
We were trained to keep our mouth shut.
Our eyes would leak blood and blood would come out of our ears. I looked at things that radiation would do.
You're watching your friends die off.
We've been blacked out of the records, so we don't exist.
This is a town with a secret. Here, people won't talk about where they work. They can't. Here in central Nevada is one of the most top secret classified military testing facilities in the United States. This test range, associated with Area 51, is known as, and I kid you not, Area 52. Welcome to the community of Tonopah. In one of the most desolate corners of this country is Tonopah. Population around 2,000. It's an old, turn-of-the-century silver mining town. In the region, there are still wild burros and mustangs that roam, living remnants of the Wild West and Spanish era. The biggest draw to town is this viral clown motel. Now, I know the question you're thinking, but is it next to a graveyard? In Tonopah, folks know there are people in town that you do not ask about their job, but they wouldn't tell you anyway. They work at the Tonopah Test Range, also known as Area 52.
Yeah, the test site, nobody talks about working there because it's all top secret. It's like Area 51. You know, you can't talk about working out there.
I have no idea what goes on there, and I've lived here my whole life. Went to school with people who work out there now. And like I told you, my father works out there. If you're working out there, you cannot tell people what's going on, period.
So lots of people have heard about Area 51, an Air Force base that's focused on experimental aerospace development that has, for decades, aroused conspiracy theorists. Area 51 is a part of a massive military operations area called the Nellis Air Force Base Complex. It's over twice the size of Delaware and contains other classified sites like the Nevada National Security Site. Also located in that complex is Area 52, which focuses on weapons development and testing. So Area 52 is used both by the Department of Defense and the Department of Energy. Remember this for later. Same place, DOD, DOE. And you're probably like, Department of Energy and Weapons? What weapons? A lot of weapons. More than 900 nuclear tests were conducted in the complex starting in the 50s up until 1992. And Jesus Christ, on Google Earth, you can see a lot of craters, like a lot of craters. And just to cap off the federal executive department talk, the DOE develops, builds, and maintains our nuclear arsenal, where the DOD is in charge of deploying our nuclear arsenal. And because we're dealing with nukes and secret weapons, the public obviously can't go there, which I will find out.
And I actually got guns pulled on me for being right at the gate because I had a shotgun on me. And we're shooting bunny rabbits out there. A bunch of Army people came up.
Here is actually the last footage I have of me driving up to the Tonopah Test Range entrance, where I politely asked if I could film the entrance to a guard, and he told me to get the fuck out right away. Jesus Christ, my heart is pumping. Holy fuck. When I reached out to Sandia National Laboratories, who runs the Tonopah Test Range, and asked how many people worked at the range, I was told 65. When I reached out to the Tonopah Town office and asked how many people worked at the range, I was told 120. It's complicated, this stuff is classified, and I didn't confirm how many people actually did work there, but you're about to find out when you do work a classified job, it can have huge repercussions.
The moment that you figured out that there was something wrong with work, we were having a reunion at my house. There was 7 other guys and myself that were sitting in my backyard, and we're having conversations. And mind you, these people that are in my backyard, I have not seen since 1987. And this is 2014, 2015 time frame. So we're sitting there talking, and one of the guys asked the question, does anybody have a tumor? And I spoke up right away because I do have tumors. And I have 20 plus tumors probably. 6 guys out of the 8 sitting there had tumors. A 7th guy goes, I don't have any tumors, but my son was born with a tumor.
I started calling up 6 guys that I work with every single day. I asked them, I got bladder issues. I got interstitial cystitis I've been diagnosed with. Interstitial cystitis is a rare disease in men. It mainly affects women. Yet here within my optics, 4 out of 6 of us had it.
So as we're sitting there talking, what other health issues? And one of the things that came up was miscarriages, that our wives were having miscarriages. Well, my wife had 3 miscarriages.
Dave Crete and Mark Eli are both Air Force veterans who previously worked at the Tonopah Test Range. These two and the following interviewees had to sign NDAs when they first joined these classified positions. The Air Force has confirmed to the Free Press that Dave and Mark served, but they won't say where. The type of tumor Dave had been afflicted with, lipoma, affects a reported 2.1 out of every 1,000 people a year. 75% of the 8 former co-workers in Dave Crete's backyard had lipomas. Dave also has a child affected by health issues. His son was diagnosed with neurofibromatosis at 18 months old, a condition that causes tumors to grow in the nervous system. Neurofibromatosis is a genetic disease, but when Dave took a genetic test, he tested negative for the mutation. Both Mark and Dave have had severe health issues. They claim their co-workers have had health issues and many have died.
Many of our wing commanders from up there, the colonels, they're all dead. 4 out of the 6 of them that I know of are dead.
We're having a reunion, the last reunion of the Red Eagles. And the last reason why it's the last reunion is because we were, majority of us, 81% of us are dead.
For these two and thousands of others that worked at the base, trying to get VA healthcare or benefits for conditions connected to working at this test site or radiation they might have been exposed to there has proven difficult or impossible. Because their jobs are classified, they can't prove where they worked.
Before I retired from the military, I ended up in the hospital for about 5 months. It turned out while running a half marathon, I collapsed. And when they brought me to the hospital, they found a large sarcoma that had grew inside me. I spent 5 months on a feeding tube, supposed to die. So, apologize, this is tough. What's hard is when I reconnected with, I need 1 second to pull together. When I reconnected with my brother and sisters who worked there, it wasn't so rare, right? It wasn't just me. There was quite a few of us who suffered these rare sarcomas. And then it clicked. The incidence in the population of my brothers and sisters back in Tonopah is a lot higher than what it should be, indicating that there is a cohort group of us there that did suffer some serious impacts.
In Tonopah, I was told by a local that the town post office, there are always flyers advertising claim specialists for people who potentially fell ill being exposed to radiation. Making the causal link between exposure to radiation and illness is very, very difficult, and these men became sick more than a decade after working at the TTR. It's a gray area both legally and medically, and if you talk to these men, they all have different theories about what aspect of working on the site made them sick. But just for 1 second, let's go back to those over 900 nuclear tests done at the Nevada test site and surrounding federal bases. Before 1963, over 100 nuclear tests were done here above ground. There were so many, it became a tourist draw in Las Vegas. So in 1963, amid the arms race between the US and the Soviet Union, scientists and doctors had begun to see the effect of these nuclear tests happening around the world. So what happened? There was a committee of scientists and dentists that found a radioactive isotope, the product of nuclear fallout, in baby teeth of children they had collected from around the world, thus proving that the cancerous products in these nuclear atmospheric tests were accumulating in humans. After this, among other findings, the US, UK, and Soviet Union came together to sign the Limited Test Ban Treaty on August 5th, 1963. It prohibited nuclear weapon testing in the atmosphere or underwater, but still allowed underground nuclear tests, where fallout is more contained in the ground, but still these nuclear tests continued until the 90s. Mark Eli is obsessed with what caused his ailments and made a Google map showing where every underground nuclear test was conducted in the region when he was working at the TTR. But you'll notice he marked 4 other nuclear tests on the map from the 60s before his time there, and all 3 of these men brought up these tests.
So Operation Roller Coaster.
4 dirty bombs.
Dirty bombs.
Tonopah stands unique because it's the only place in the world that this experiment was done.
Right before we signed that 1963 nuclear treaty, the US and the UK performed 4 unique nuclear tests at the Tonopah Test Range, known as Operation Roller Coaster. We set off 4 dirty bombs. A dirty bomb is where you take radioactive material and you combine it with like conventional explosives, say like dynamite. There's no fission or fusion, but that plutonium is blown into microscopic radioactive dust that coats everything in its radius. The half-life of plutonium-239 used in these tests is 24,000 years. Every microscopic ballooning radioactive particle from those blasts will still be out there for thousands and thousands of years. If you look at the declassified 1963 report on the operation, they measured plutonium in the air and ground over an area from 9 to 70 square miles. From where Mark and other men say they worked, the closest dirty bomb went off only 4.5 miles away.
The reports I've read back in the 70s show that a lot of that material was thought to have been, settled out into the ground.
The report Michael is referring to here is a now declassified environmental report from 1975 that says these areas are well fenced and there's no indication of migration of this surface contamination outside the fence, let alone outside the range.
But as you can imagine, when you come out and you start building bases, flying airplanes, and driving machinery across desert, you're going to stir it up. You're going to break up, and you're going to start releasing that airborne contamination back into the air.
Over 450 of those that served out there are already dead, and the average age of death is 65. You're watching your friends die off or be horribly sick, and it's inconceivable now to learn what the government knew before you ever went there.
That probably pisses me off more than anything else. I was one of the medical officers in charge of taking care of the folks at these locations, and they never told me that they were monitoring, that the place was contaminated. And to find out now is just as hard. Because if I had known, we could have took action. We could have done something different. We could have done more monitoring inside. We could have done more personnel protection.
In 1998, the Department of Energy tried cleaning up one of these sites and was only partially successful because some of the soil was still too highly contaminated to be sorted out. Remember those wild mustangs? According to Mark, when they fenced off the Tonopah Test Range, they also trapped all the larger wildlife in. From time to time, they would use a helicopter to go out and round up the horses suffering from the effects of chemicals and radiation and shoot them. In another event in which the cause of death was never revealed, a worker pulled up to a pond that was surrounded by an entire group of dead horses. And the crazy thing is, after all these stories you have heard, people still work at these sites. And if you're wondering how that's possible, let's go back to that 1975 declassified environmental assessment of the Tonopah Test Range. It states that discontinuing the work done at the range would be against the national interest. And conclusion, because the cost benefits, the environmental cost inherent in the work are small and reasonable for the benefits received. Every Air Force veteran I talked to, not a single one had been warned about any possible issues with contamination at the base. I've been told people who still work at the base have not been told of any type of environmental contamination. Dave Crete says he knows people who've worked at the range within the last 10 years who've gotten sick. Okay, so I literally told you to remember this earlier. The site is run by the Department of Energy, so people like Dave Crete and Mark Eli, employed by the Department of Defense, were working side by side with employees of the DOE. While the Department of Defense employees have struggled to get compensation, DOE employees working at the exact same place, side by side, are covered by federal legislation. So far, about $25 billion in compensation has been paid out to former and current employees of the Department of Energy for ailments related to radiation and toxic exposure.
And I've heard some say, well, the Department of Energy, well, they verified that it's contaminated. They're providing benefits for all the civilians that are up there. The Veterans Affairs group doesn't call the Department of Energy for verification. They call the Department of Defense, and the Department of Defense claims ignorance. And the most graphic way I can explain this is that the chow hall, which was run by the Department of Energy that I ate in, the person that cooked my cheeseburger has been covered with medical care and compensated up to $400,000.
Dave and Mark can't even get the Department of Defense to mention any single place they worked to doctors or lawyers. Mark attempted to get his medical records for 30 years. And Michael has confirmed when he was the site's doctor, he kept and maintained records of the entire working staff. We contacted the various agencies about the health risk of the TTR and the inability of former classified workers to get compensation or claim health effects from the site. The DoD made no comment and referred us to the Air Force, which only confirmed Mark and and Dave's service. The DOE never replied to multiple reach outs, and the VA said Veterans Affairs has procedures in place to document veteran service even if they serve in a classified setting. We followed up for comment on Dave and Mark's multi-decade attempts to obtain their military records and get compensation, but have not yet received a response. This is why Mark Eli has spent his retirement helping others like himself, and this is why Dave Crete created the organization The Invisible Enemy to bring awareness to this issue, and currently has legislation drafted by U.S. House Representative Mark Emmede of Nevada to get thousands like them treatment and compensation. This is the reunion of the 4477th Red Eagles, who were based at the Tonopah Test Range. In circles in the Air Force community, they're legendary. Definitely look them up online. Chatting with these heroes, I did not bring up the issue of illness. While many veterans are dealing with the same problems as Dave and Mark, they feel that the pact of secrecy demanded by classified positions should be upheld for life, no matter what.
Since I've been helping people, I've noticed pattern, and there's a certain moment you realize you're the lobster in the water. You know, I've got multiple organ failure, I got stage 3 kidney disease, I got liver disease, I got lung disease. I know I'm a walking time bomb. There's this old saying in the military that you're the point man. You want to do the last thing. You're going out doing something so your life made a difference in the world. We did what we did because our life was not as important as those around us. And I just want to make a difference for the people that I care about.
After having spent time with these men, it is very obvious the United States needs a system for former classified employees at some point to access their personal records and get coverage for conditions arising at classified sites. People like Dave, Mark, and Michael claim that the government, knowing the dangers, exposed them to radiation and is continuing to expose workers to this day. They've seen their friends die unjustly, and it's broken a part of them. But now, because of their voices, everyone can now know what is happening at this test site, and this is a story that the DoD needs to answer to. These men, they made a pact to our country, and our country, it never had their back.